Hello, welcome back to Marathon Man, where I go through Doctor Who from the very beginning, and you join me as we meet our new companion. In about a minute, we've met Vicki and Bennett, and we know the nature of their predicament. In about 3 minutes, we know that they are the only survivors of their party and that they are being menaced by something called Koquillion. It gets a lot done in a short space of time. With that in mind, the rescue is something of a triumph. Now, its primary purpose might not be so much as a story, more of an introduction to Susan's replacement, but despite that, there is still a story and it packs quite a lot into its 2 episodes. I may even go so far to say as this might be the most economical beginning to a Doctor Who script yet. There are some fun exchanges to be had in the TARDIS as well. Noticing that the ship has stopped trembling, indicating that they've landed, Ian and Barbara wake the Doctor to tell him, and upon being told that the trembling has stopped, he has a delightfully Doctor Who reply, which is,
"Oh my dear, I'm so glad you're feeling better."
Seeing the crew as a trio is a little bit odd, but in a weird way it galvanises them. It's almost like it takes the departure of Susan for them to come together and feel very much like a team. The script isn't just economical in setting up Vicky's situation, it gets a lot into these early scenes with the travellers as well, without actually having to say all that much. The Doctor calling for Susan to open the doors and then his reaction when he realises is really nicely done, as is Barbara then stepping in to invite him to show her how to open the doors instead. 2 lines and so much said. Obviously it isn't long before the crew are being menaced and Barbara is promptly pushed off a cliff. While the explanation as to how she survived isn't that satisfying, obviously I'm glad she survived. In fact, before her fall she gets one of my favourite Barbara moments, her wry, "Can I?" when Koquillion sleazily says she can trust him.
You can trust me.
Can I?
The Doctor gets a good character beat too when he realises that he's on a planet that he's visited before and wonders whether he could convince Ian that it was deliberate. The script, while not long in terms of episodes, is still very carefully making sure that every character has something to do. In fact, the interplay between the Doctor and his companions is very different here from when he first met them. It's almost bouncy. And whenever I reach this point on a marathon, it's here, perhaps more than any previous story, where I finally feel like, for want of a better term, I'm watching proper Doctor Who. Maybe this is because it's the first time a new companion is introduced. Okay, Ian and Barbara joined the TARDIS in the very first episode, but the Doctor and Susan also joined the show in that first episode. They're just the first regular cast, and it's not even like Ian and Barbara are set up as companions so much as, hostages. So, with the show now having found its feet and having lost its first regular cast member, the introduction of Vicki is the first time the show is introducing us to a new TARDIS crew member since it began. And this sort of thing will happen a lot from now on, this being the very first example of the show hitting a beat that we will all come to be familiar with, chimes as another piece of the puzzle falling into place. And Vicki is set up very interestingly. Her relationship with Koquillion is such that she is instantly likeable and we root for her because she's being terrorised by a big ugly monster. It's as plain as day that she is a surrogate for Susan, that much is true. She's a child of the future and maybe more prone to emotion than the other regular cast members, but she does start her time on the show very differently from Susan. Perhaps it's Maureen O'Brien's performance, but Vicki seems to have a bit more steel than Susan. Her desperate situation may also play a part in that, coupled with the fact that she's now an orphan. Susan, while also a child from elsewhere in space and or time, was in the care of her grandfather, whereas Vicki has nobody left, so maybe that's what accounts for her coming across slightly stronger than Susan. I've mentioned the Doctor's little character touches, and Barbara's too, but don't think for a second that means I've forgotten about Ian, because he gets a really good showing here as well. When faced with mortal danger, he still finds time to say please when asking the Doctor to hang on to something. Now, it's little moments like this that make this very first TARDIS team of the Doctor, Ian and Barbara one of my very favourites. An interesting element gets introduced when Barbara kills Sandy, which is a perfectly understandable reaction because she sees a beast that is seemingly about to attack Vicki. But when it transpires that it's not a beast at all and is in fact something more like Vicki's pet, A tension is introduced between them that would have been really interesting in future stories had it been followed through, and would have certainly rung the changes from Susan. As it happens though, that thread is resolved fairly quickly. By episode and story's end, Vicki has apologised to Barbara about this. Now, while the alternative might have been more interesting to me, that isn't to say that I'm dissatisfied with the plot thread as it is here. In fact, I guess it's another one of Doctor Who's strengths in that it flips things beyond the obvious. A hulking alien brute that turning out to be quite a benevolent creature isn't something that would occur to many, certainly not casual viewers of Doctor Who at this time. We'd just met the Slither in the last story, for example. And Vicki being upset about it doesn't necessarily diminish any heroism on Barbara's part either. It's a really nice little segment, if, for me, just resolved a little bit too neatly, a little bit too quickly. In the meantime, it further cements Vicki as that little bit tougher than Susan. Yeah, the Doctor's granddaughter did have moments of insolence, but Vicki stands up to the three here quite matter-of-factly. She doesn't know them from Adam, so she's got no reason to automatically defer to them. And once things have softened, we can see what a good addition to the group she is. I adore Barbara's reaction to Vicki saying that she comes from 2493, and I adore both hers and Ian's reactions when Vicki says that the pair of them must be over 550 years old. It's the sort of thing that could play out completely unaltered in the modern iteration of the show. Yet even though this is really just filler to bring on a new regular, there is still a story to be resolved, and that gives us a really nice scene between the Doctor and the villain. Okay, he's faced down Daleks, he's faced down other adversaries, but he hasn't really faced down a singular antagonist in this way, in a black and white hero-villain sort of way, and it suits him. I like the set, I like the music. They combine to create a really good atmosphere, and they enhance the denouement where the Doctor proves clever, resourceful and full of righteous indignation. His fury at Bennett's genocide is the Doctor we know and love, and Bennett's attempts to take out the Doctor sort of give Hartnell, if you like, his first proper action scene. Maybe it would have been more satisfying if the Doctor had dispatched Bennett himself rather than the slightly disappointing way that the villain does meet his end. And the show probably could have got away with it back then in the murkier early days of the Doctor's morality. I guess he has categorically stated by this point that he's not a killer, so I'm not too bothered in the way that it plays out. And no, I don't want the Doctor to be a murderer. I just end up hating Bennett as much as the Doctor does and find Bennett's actual demise a little bit underwhelming. That said, the twist that Bennett was Koquillion is a decent one, and it makes Vicky's ordeal literally more twisted. Now, as in anything, twists in Doctor Who really only work once, so going into this story already knowing it is a very different experience, but the first time I watched this story, I had no idea. And so, Vicki becomes the first in a long line of new companions to be welcomed aboard the TARDIS. And she's the first character to see the interior of the ship since Ian and Barbara blundered in An Unearthly Child. And characters still join the TARDIS in this way today. And 58 years later, we're still getting these bigger on the inside scenes as new companions see it for the very first time. And it's partly for this reason that The Rescue is something of a treasure for me, because it offers a very tangible thread for Doctor Who to still pull on to this day. 53 episodes into the marathon now, and it feels like Doctor Who has been given a fresh burst of energy. I'm going to go for Vicki stating that Ian and Barbara are over half a millennium old.
Well, yes, I suppose I am.
Bennett's end isn't exactly as meaty as it should be, if you get my meaning. So, out of 5. It's another 4. It gracefully introduces a new main character and tells its own story as well. It might only be 2 episodes, but there is no fat on it. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed Bennett going down with his ship on Dido, then please give it a like. It helps the channel enormously. And what did you think of these 2 episodes? Are they a short, sharp burst of streamlined storytelling, or did you think they were flimsy and just an excuse to introduce the new companion? And is that new companion a welcome addition to the crew, or do you wish that Susan was still here? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you back here soon for a vacation to Italy. And if you don't want to miss that, hit the subscribe button, climb that cloister bell, and I'll see you soon. But remember, whichever route you take, all roads lead to Rome.